Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 167, The Imperialistic Council of the Magi. Link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links to my books blogs. This one's a little bit longer than a couple that I've released lately. I think it's about 50-something pages, but it's quite dense. It's an interesting work, and it actually ascribes itself to a past era. This is common within the occult. For instance, the Ars Goetia, Solomon had to do with the writing of this. Well, not really. It comes from the Renaissance. You think of the Sword of Moses, some of these other works, they ascribe themselves, a lot of the fortune-telling works ascribe themselves to Napoleon Bonaparte, or to a text that he had. None of that is authentic, like even Napoleon's Oraculum. It doesn't have to do with Napoleon. It actually comes from a latter-day Americana tradition dating to the mid-1700s, and in fact goes back even further than the Napoleonic era, technically speaking. This happens quite commonly. This particular work ascribes itself to Eliphas Levi, and I might be slightly mispronouncing that, but who cares? Essentially, it's supposedly to teach the student, the acolyte, the initiate, how to become a magi, and it goes through and has various philosophical statements about what you should be doing, mindfulness, and be chaste and charitable and all these things. It's quite interesting. Now, in my opinion, reading this, it resembles other works from the period in that it describes itself. It takes Eastern lore, some of the vague Buddhistic and Hindu philosophy, imports it, westernizes it, repackages it, puts it under the name of a Western philosopher, and then releases it to the public. This was quite common at the time. The number of works from especially roughly the 1890s through the 1920s that did this is astounding. Even my bestseller, The Book of Forbidden Knowledge, technically, it's a bric-a-brac. It's similar to the Petit Albert. It ascribes itself to older sources, takes talismanic material that probably is from the Black Pullet, at least in part, and repackages it together for that Victorian and Edwardian audience that was privy to it. Interesting work. Again, bestseller, and I still don't know why. Definitely worth reading, definitely a good work, but the material is misattributed. Now, I've never had a problem with this. Some purists do, but then those same purists will use the lesser keys. They're talking about texts that are ascribed to the Solomonic era, and they have nothing to do with Solomon. They were then modern at the time, the 1700s. They're relatively new. They come from that late Renaissance period. Sometimes texts come from the Enlightenment, and they're talking about Solomon or Moses or something like that. Oh, okay, King David wrote this book. Adam wrote this book. Enoch wrote this book, and it's quite interesting. Again, so it is misattributed. But it does have authentic occult lore. But I think that it's more readable for the humor of it. The humorous aspect is how over the top it is. It's very flowery. The very title, Imperialistic Council of the Magi, extremely funny. And so I definitely recommend it. It's definitely something you should have on your occult bookshelf. What I would say, though, is of course, take some of it with a little bit of a grain of salt. Again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon, second and third links to my books blog. Interesting work. If you're interested in the occult fiction sort of stuff, there is some more of that under, I believe, the mysticism header. It's combined with, or the spirituality header. Can't remember which one. Just check both of them. There's plenty of books there. Not going to exhaust it for a while. If you were to have the whole catalog that I've edited, take you a couple years probably to thoroughly read through everything. That's about all. Peace out.